for the time. I think about a month or 2 months ago, Paul and Andrew said, "Oh, come, we should talk. The city should talk, right? Just speak, not talk, right? So I think we should talk more, particularly on this issue. And last year we have Andrew was having a studio in the Chinese U on, similar topics, and then then we have common interests. And I said I was drafting it, and in fact it is quite interesting. The more that we involve, the more problems that we discover, and the more issues, I think more issues coming up. So maybe I just share with you some of the experience and the process, how we approach it. In fact, we started off from the commission from Durham Bureau, and they approached Rocco, and Rocco knocked my doors. "Oh, please come, and we should talk and start to do something together." So then we start to look at this issue. Because I think 2 years ago we did a study on the public space, public open space on another commission. So we look at the public space in Hong Kong, what is the purpose of it and how it's being used. And for this POSPD, which is more a particular issue because the complexity of this kind of space is between the public and the private side. So we started off to look at the issue from our old brother, New York, who created that, the POPS. In fact, they have 10 times more of those numbers. They have about 503 numbers of pubs in New York. And they've been evolving over time. Actually, the first more systemized study is starting off from 1979. And they also share some similarity with Hong Kong, with high density, but the exterior spaces are more moderate, not in the winter time, right? And but they have also a more regular urban fabric. So these are some of the characters of the New York City. But when we study more about how they evolve over time, they're also taking different stages. From the first stage, which is more irregular, nobody's controlling it. It's simply it exists. And then there are regulations to categorize them into different things. Now they try to evolve it, and a part of it will become regulations. And some of them, they simply erase it. So it is a process that we learn from New York. And when we look at Hong Kong, the situation, most of the time when we look at the pubs, I think the existence, when we go back to the why it exists, is basically because of planning requirement. So we have to provide the quantity, how much open spaces to be provided within one district, or otherwise. If it's not enough, that quantity may be developed together with the private development. So this is how it exists, or how it becomes in place. But most of the time, in some cases, not all, then we discover that there are kind of abuses by the private, either by the developer or by the user. Because in some cases, we went to Sai Kung somewhere, you have to take 2 hours time to go to the development, and they call that is the pubs. Nobody knows exactly where it is, and it's quite difficult to identify. Versus some cases right in the middle of the city, where some of the cases can be quite popularly used. And as I mentioned, we have existing 58 numbers of this kind of space, and we started off this research a few years ago. But also there's some characters here in Hong Kong, because I think the exterior in Hong Kong is quite different from New York, because it's quite hot and humid. And the urban fabric is quite irregular, and also because of the sloping terrain. So we have these particular issues to be addressed. And also of this incident, which is quite famous about the Times Square incident, there are debates between the public and the management, and how we're going to define the public domains and private domains and all this kind of stuff. It becomes something to be reported on the newspaper. And then there are more cases being discovered, including this space in IFC, which was designed by Rocco, and I say, oh, Rocco, can we use this case? And say, oh yes, why not? We have to be self-criticized. So then we use this case to demonstrate, okay, this is a big piece of land up there, up here actually, not on the screen, but on the podium level, which can hardly be used, I mean, noticed most of the time, unless recently, that is kind of posted on the newspaper saying that this is a public space. So more people, including more Filipinos, are using it now. So I think this is something that we look into, and this should be resolved, because partly it is the ownership and the management rights, partly is how the public is being engaged in terms of the use and legal definition. So as Gracie was mentioning, so that's the reason why the consultancy study started. And before that, we set to ourselves very simple concepts about these guidelines. That should be clear enough, practical, flexible, and also beneficial to the public. And at last, it is respecting the urban design principles. So these are the underlying principles. And I think this has been explained. We try to achieve a balance between the public and the privacy. And also, in the process, we also take into account of different stakeholders. So we start off to study. We have a good assistant who is a student of Hendrick, doing the whole year of research on the New York pubs. So I employ him to be assistant to the research. So he did categorizing all these kind of different types of public spaces in New York, which is now turning into another kind of category. Not exactly the same, but I think this is part of the history of how they